So tonight we drift into a dream. You're back, or maybe you've never left. It's hard to say. The room is quiet, your eyes are soft, and in the gentle hum of this evening, something ancient stirs not in the mind, but somewhere behind it, like the shadow of a cloud moving over still water. Tonight we drift into the world of Zhuangzi, a philosopher of dreams, paradoxes, and whimsical, waking mysteries. You're barefoot in a dream he once had, or maybe it's a dream you're having of him. Either way, it's warm here. There's a breeze like a whisper through silk. Fireflies blink somewhere in the reeds. You're not quite awake, not quite asleep. You're just floating. Now, if you tried living like a full Taoist sage today, wandering barefoot through forests, laughing at bureaucrats, declining all job offers, you'd probably get ghosted by your dentist and flagged by your bank. So we'll settle for something more subtle, drifting softly through his world without judgment, without expectations, just letting the dream carry you. Before we settle in, take a second to tap, like, or even subscribe, only if this quiet space feels like home to you. I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it? Now ease off the brightness, maybe let a soft breeze hum in the background, and let's wander gently into tonight's story together. You find yourself standing in a quiet garden, not a manicured one, not one with sculpted hedges or tidy borders. This is the kind of place that grows however it wants, branches bent however they please, stones half covered in moss, water trickling somewhere you can't see. It's early morning, or maybe early evening. The sun is lazy about it either way, and in the middle of the garden is a man lying on his back, smiling. He's not doing much, just watching the clouds, occasionally chuckling to himself like he's remembered a joke that only the wind could understand. This is Zhuangzi, though he wouldn't care if you called him that. Names are just labels, he'd say, like tagging clouds. You call it cloud, but does the cloud care? You sit beside him. He doesn't look at you, but he knows you're there. Do you know? He murmurs. I once dreamt I was a butterfly. Or maybe, I'm a butterfly dreaming I'm me. What's the difference? Really? He doesn't expect an answer. He's asleep again before you can think of one. That's the thing with Zhuangzi. He makes you question things not by shouting or proving, but by chuckling and vanishing into riddles. He didn't write rules, he didn't preach sermons, he told stories about talking fish, about upside-down sages, about men who forgot their own names and lived quite happily ever after. He didn't want you to believe him. He wanted you to wonder. And here you are wandering, through the soft thickets of Taoist thought, where the Tao is not a rule or a god or a principle. It's just the way, like a path made only of footsteps, like breath before you notice it. Modern philosophers still argue whether Zhuangzi meant the butterfly dream literally or metaphorically. Was he poking at the nature of perception, or was it a poetic joke? Maybe both, or neither. It's hard to pin him down, which is kind of the point. You walk now through the dream, his or yours. It doesn't matter. A bridge arches over a slow-moving stream. The water beneath reflects the sky so clearly it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. You lean over and watch. Your face ripples. A dragonfly darts by, almost laughing. You smile. You don't need answers here. Just presence. There's an old Taoist saying, the way that can be spoken is not the constant way, which is a fancy way of saying, as soon as you try to describe the mystery, you've already missed it. Zhuangzi loved that. He adored the cosmic joke of it all, that we run around trying to define life, while life just keeps fluttering by like a butterfly who couldn't care less what you call it. There's a gentle irony here. We modern humans crave certainty. We want 5 steps to enlightenment, or a podcast that tells us what's real. But Zhuangzi, he'd say sit by the river, watch the fish. If you feel peaceful, that's enough. If you're still hungry for answers, Maybe you're asking the wrong questions. And he wouldn't even say that out loud. He'd just hand you a cup of tea, laugh, and let you figure it out eventually. That's the gentle art of not knowing. Not the panicked, I don't know what's going on kind of not knowing, but the relaxed, shoulder shrugging, maybe I'll never know. And that's actually fine sort. It's not ignorance, it's intimacy with the mystery. You wander deeper now. A path opens through rustling bamboo. The stalks bend in the breeze, whispering secrets in no language you recognize. Maybe they're laughing, too. Zhuangzi might appear again barefoot, carrying a gourd of wine, asking if you've ever debated a tree. Or he might be that butterfly, hovering just at the edge of your vision, daring you to follow. Or maybe he's become the wind entirely. That's the thing about dreams, they're slippery. And so is truth. But one thing's certain, you're not quite who you were when we began. Something softer, something slower. And that something, whatever it is, smiles gently in the not knowing. You walk quietly beneath the soft shadows of willows, the air tinged with that warm dusk smell somewhere between earth and memory. A faint laughter rises from the other side of the trees, not loud or brash, but easy, the kind that bubbles up when no one's trying too hard to be wise. You follow it, of course. And there he is again, Zhuangzi, sitting cross-legged by a pond, skipping stones. The stones never bounce. He doesn't care. Every splash is followed by a chuckle. Why are you laughing, you ask, before you even mean to. He doesn't look up because it's all ridiculous. He says, that doesn't mean it's bad, just ridiculous. You sit down beside him. The pond reflects the moon now full, quiet, oblivious. Somewhere off to the right, a frog croaks, as if seconding the thought. Zhuangzi's laughter wasn't cruel, it wasn't cynical. It was a kind of cosmic amusement, a reminder that seriousness, like ambition or identity, is something we mostly make up. In one story, he visits the tomb of a friend and finds the mourners weeping like the world has ended. Zhuangzi sits silently at first, then suddenly starts singing and drumming on a pot. The mourners are horrified. How can you do this, they ask. He was your friend. Zhuangzi shrugs. Life and death are just natural changes, he says. Why should I cry over a transformation? Now scholars have debated this story endlessly. Was it disrespect enlightenment? A kind of Taoist satire? No one agrees. That's the charm. Zhuangzi wasn't handing out moral lessons. He was handing you your own reaction. You look back at the pond. A firefly skims the surface, leaving a trail of light for no one. There's something very modern about Zhuangzi. Despite being centuries removed, he wouldn't have lasted long on social media. Too slippery, too contradictory. He didn't care about content pillars or building a brand. One day he might call something sacred. The next, he'd laugh at the word. If he had a podcast, he'd forget he had one. Then show up a month later with a story about a turtle that wanted to be a cloud. And yet, there's something grounding in that, something restful. You don't have to know. You don't have to always believe the same things. You're allowed to laugh at your former self. That's not failure. That's flow. Another stone skips once, sinks. Success, he says, as if that matters. You ask him what he thinks about knowledge. He chews a reed. It's useful, he says, until it isn't, like a boat you use to cross a river, but don't carry it through the forest. It reminds you of another Taoist idea that the Tao can't be taught, only caught, not in the mind, in the marrow. You don't learn it like math, you absorb it like sunlight. And here's the quiet joke Zhuangzi wrote thousands of words about how words are unreliable. A paradox, maybe. Or maybe it's the only way. You can't walk to the moon, but you can point. So he pointed, with stories, dreams, nonsense, and laughter. In one tale, A man boasts to Zhuangzi about a speech he's written, packed with elegant metaphors and airtight logic. Zhuangzi nods, unimpressed. "That's nice," he says. "But do you understand the silence between the words? That one hits different, because you felt that, haven't you? The way a quiet moment sometimes says more than a clever paragraph. The way a gaze, a sigh, a shared pause between friends feels more real than 1,000 philosophies. A breeze nudges the pond. The moon wobbles slightly in its reflection. Maybe that's what Zhuangzi was really laughing at, not at the world, but at our urge to trap it in definitions. He wasn't mocking sorrow, or love, or death. He was laughing because we act like we've got it all figured out, and the Tao is always 3 steps ahead, slipping out of our hands like mist. And yet, he wasn't bitter. There's no anger in his parables, just the mischief of someone who knows the punchline but won't spoil the joke. Modern scholars, particularly those who crave intellectual consistency, often find Zhuangzi frustrating. Was he serious or not? They ask. Does he have a system? Is he skeptical or mystical? The debates go on. But if Zhuangzi were here, he'd probably just offer you a cup of tea, pat a dog on the head, and ask if ducks dream in color. You lie back now, the ground warm beneath you, the pond stills, the sky is a bowl of ink. You can't tell if it's getting darker or lighter. Do you think we're awake? You ask. Zhuangzi doesn't answer. He's already turned into mist, or memory, or the moon's quiet sigh. And you, well, you smile. You don't need to know. You're still in the dream, though it's changed shape again. The pond is gone, the night, too. Now there's bamboo, tall stalks swaying gently, whispering secrets overhead. You walk slowly, each step cushioned by fallen leaves. There's a rhythm here, not a beat like a song, but something more subtle. A natural timing. Nothing is in a hurry, yet everything moves. This is the bamboo grove of Zhuangzi's mind, filled with shadows, metaphors, and ideas that bend like the stalks above you. You can't quite hold on to them, but you don't need to. They're not meant to be held. You pause beside a crooked tree. Its trunk twists like a question mark. Useless for lumber, perfect for shade, and somehow it feels like it's smiling. Zhuangzi's philosophy is made of these kinds of paradoxes where truth hides behind the ridiculous, and freedom comes from letting go of the need to define. He believed most people live trapped in their own illusions, running after names, chasing titles, caught in arguments over what's right or real. But Zhuangzi, he preferred shadows, dreams, gentle drifting. One of his most beloved tales involves a conversation with a friend about fish. They're standing on a bridge, watching them swim below. Zhuangzi says, "Look how happy those fish are." The friend counters, "You're not a fish. How do you know what makes them happy?" And Zhuangzi, with that eternal grin, replies, "Ah, but you're not me. So how do you know I don't know?" Now, philosophers love to chew on this one. Some see it as epistemology questions about knowledge and how we know what we know. Others see it as a koan riddle not meant to be solved, but to provoke a deeper insight. But maybe, just maybe, it's also just a joke. You step off the path now. There is no path, really, just bamboo and breeze. You notice the way each stalk bends in the wind without breaking. That's the Tao again, not a straight road, but a yielding flow. In the West, we like to talk about progress, goals, milestones, as if life were a staircase leading somewhere clear. But in Zhuangzi's world, the staircase is made of clouds. You climb it by not climbing at all. That's the art of wandering. There's a Taoist term you woo, which loosely translates to wandering without purpose, not lost, not fleeing, just drifting, like clouds, like butterflies, like the moon when no one's looking. And you're wandering now, too, through thought, through time, through the half-remembered fragments of someone else's dream. Your usual questions, what should I do? Who should I be? Where am I going? They've gone quiet, not gone, just resting. You pass a small shrine with no writing on it, only a single stone, smooth and round. You reach out and feel its surface. It feels like the back of an old hand, familiar. A soft rustling behind you. Zhuangzi again. Maybe, or maybe just the wind. Hard to tell. There's another story he once told. A man dreams he's a bird, flying free, then wakes to find himself in a cage, heart aching for the sky. He spends years trying to recapture the dream, building wings, studying birdsong, but he never flies again. And then, one night, he stops trying. He sleeps, and in that dream without striving, he soars. What does it mean? Depends who you ask. Some say it's about effortlessness, others say it's about surrender, or maybe it's about the futility of trying to force freedom. That when we chase things too hard, meaning truth, self, we tighten the very chains we hope to slip. You keep walking, and now the grove feels less like a forest and more like a thought. Each tree a sentence, each breeze a pause. You realize you've been thinking without thinking. And that's the odd magic of Zhuangzi. He never tells you what to think. He invites you to feel around the edges of your own mind, gently, like a blindfolded dancer moving through candlelight. Modern psychology sometimes calls this a liminal state, a space between certainty and doubt, between dream and waking. It's not where most people like to stay, but Zhuangzi built a home there. And what's strange is the more you let go, the more peaceful it becomes. The need to define, explain, fix it loosens. You feel light, a little silly, a little infinite. A breeze stirs the bamboo again. The stalks knock softly together like old friends clinking cups. You can't help but smile. Here, in this grove, not knowing doesn't feel like a failure. It feels like breathing, like you've finally taken off a heavy coat you didn't know you were wearing. You sit now, no need to walk further. There's nowhere else to go. A leaf lands on your shoulder and stays. And in that stillness, something shifts. Not an answer, not a realization, just space. Enough for the wind to pass through, enough for the Tao to do whatever it does. You're not sure how long you've been sitting there. The bamboo grove sways around you, and the breeze carries with it a slow kind of time, like a song you forgot you loved. You lie back now, letting the ground cradle you. Overhead, stalks shift and murmur, casting dancing shadows across your face. And in that calm, you remember something Zhuangzi once wrote, something odd. The fish in the water do not know they are wet. You chuckle a little. Of course they don't. They've never been anything else. How could they? But that's the point, isn't it? We swim in our own assumptions, our habits, our perceptions so constantly and completely that we stop seeing them. Like the air, like the self, like the story you tell yourself every morning when you put on your name like a jacket. You are, in a way, that fish. So am I. So was Zhuangzi. Except maybe he was the one who suddenly noticed the water. There's a rustle nearby. A round little creature waddles out from under a bush. It's hard to say exactly what it is. A badger. A dreaming thought. It looks at you with quiet disdain, then waddles away. You think, briefly, about giving it a name, but somehow that feels like missing the point. You sit up, brush some leaves from your arms, and begin walking again, though now you're not sure if the path is taking you somewhere or if you're just moving for the joy of movement. In another of Zhuangzi's tales, he meets a man who is completely convinced that his shadow is following him maliciously. Terrified, the man runs, but of course, the faster he runs, the faster the shadow chases. Exhausted, the man collapses, and only then, in stillness, does the shadow finally leave him alone. Modern thinkers often use this story as a metaphor for self-awareness gone haywire, the way our fear of the unknown turns introspection into obsession. Or maybe it's about identity, and how chasing yourself can become a kind of trap. Philosophers still debate it. Zhuangzi, he'd probably just laugh and say, maybe stop running for a minute. And that's the thing, so much of what we call truth is just what we've gotten used to. We think the sky is blue, but it isn't, not really. It only looks blue from this angle, in this light, through this atmosphere. We think thoughts are ours, but half the time they're just echoes from books or family or some podcast we forgot we listened to while washing dishes. In Zhuangzi's world, truth isn't something you grab. It's something you fall into when you stop trying to know it. It's the water you're already in. There's another turn in the grove now, less a turn and more a shift. The trees thin, the ground softens. A stream trickles nearby, looping like a ribbon over stones. You step into it without thinking, and the coolness makes you laugh aloud. You weren't expecting it, but why not? It's just water. You're just feet. Still, you stand there a moment longer, watching your toes ripple in the clear current. You try to remember what you were worried about earlier today. It's gone now, like fog burned off by morning. Somewhere, a bell rings soft, distant, maybe not real. Zhuangzi once told a story about a man who believed he had lost his self. Friends tried to comfort him, but he insisted, my body is here, but the me that lived in it has gone away. They thought he was mad, but Zhuangzi saw wisdom, because what if that me was never as solid as it pretended to be? What if we're less like statues and more like smoke? It unsettles some people. This idea, we like definitions. We want a self to be something firm, like a desk or a declaration. But Zhuangzi would say the opposite. That freedom is being like water. That wisdom is in noticing the wetness around you and laughing at how seriously you used to grip it. You crouch by the stream and scoop a little water into your hands. You let it fall through your fingers. It doesn't resist. It doesn't panic. It just flows. You whisper something to it, maybe a question, maybe a thank you. And then, for a moment, everything stills. The stream hums softly. The breeze rests. The sky waits. You don't feel like a person with a name or a goal or even a body. You feel like the space between things, like a pause between thoughts. And it doesn't feel empty. It feels like home. Not the kind with walls, the kind that's always been there, under everything else. The stream winds off behind you as you wander again, not away from it, not toward anything, really, just along. The light has changed. You're not sure if it's dawn or dusk. Either way, it's golden and sleepy, and everything it touches feels wrapped in warmth. Even your thoughts have softened around the edges. And in this gentle in-betweenness, you begin to feel something strange. You're not sure who you are anymore. Not in a scary way. More like forgetting the punchline of an old joke, or the weight of a coat you took off an hour ago. You try to recall your name. It arrives, but it feels like someone else's, like a borrowed sweater. Zhuangzi might nod at that. The self, he'd say, is a series of masks. The trick is to wear them lightly. There's an old Taoist phrase, wu-wu, often translated as no self, but it's not about erasing who you are. It's about letting the hard edges melt, like ice in tea. It's not gone. It's just transformed. You pass a tree now short, squat, with roots like curled fingers. Someone has carved something into the bark, a single character. You can't read it. Maybe it says quiet, or maybe it says laugh, or maybe it says nothing and just wanted to be a line in the story. Zhuangzi's version of self was never solid. He saw people less like statues and more like rivers constantly shifting, edgeless, unknowable. You're not the same you who woke up this morning, and you're definitely not the same you who clicked on this video. And thank goodness. There's a story in the Zhuangzi about a man who dreams he's a great king, lavish robes, loyal subjects, the works. He rules wisely, generously, and believes in his heart that he is truly that king. Then he wakes up. He's just a farmer. No robe, no crown, just calluses and chickens. But here's the twist. He's not sad. He smiles, because the dream was part of him too. So who is he, really? The king, the farmer, the dreamer? Zhuangzi's answer, none of the above, and also all of the above. Modern psychology sometimes dances near this idea. The constructed self, they call it, a bundle of roles, memories, expectations assembled like furniture from IKEA. Only you lost the instructions long ago. But Zhuangzi didn't need terms. He had metaphors, like the cicada who sheds its shell every summer, or the snake who outgrows its skin, or the dreamer who becomes a butterfly who becomes you. You catch your reflection now in a puddle on the path. It ripples, and suddenly you're a stranger. And then just as suddenly, yourself again. Both moments feel true. And so you smile, not because you've solved anything, but because solving doesn't matter here. There's a hush to this kind of freedom, a lightness. You stop needing to hold everything together. You don't need to defend who you are. You just are, like the tree, like the sky. Zhuangzi once told a story about a man who forgot his feet when he got good at dancing. He forgot his mouth when he learned to sing. He forgot himself when he moved in harmony with the world. True skill, Zhuangzi said, is forgetting the self. Of course, modern philosophers have mixed feelings. Isn't that dangerous, they ask? Don't we need identity to make choices, to take responsibility? Maybe, but Zhuangzi would offer a different angle. The self isn't your anchor, it's your raft. And sometimes you're allowed to drift. You reach a clearing now. It's quiet, no birds, no wind, just you, or whatever's left of you, after all this shedding. And then barely audible a laugh. You turn, and there he is again. Zhuangzi, sitting cross-legged in the dirt, eyes closed, grinning like the moon just told him a secret. You came a long way, he says, without opening his eyes. I'm not sure who I am anymore, you reply. He chuckles. Ah, then maybe you're starting to relax. You sit beside him, and he doesn't say anything more, and neither do you, because what's left to say? The breeze returns, nudging a few leaves across your ankles. One lands on your knee and stays. The ground feels more solid now, or maybe you've just stopped resisting its weight. You take a deep breath, not because you're supposed to, just because it feels good, because you can. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like you don't have to be anything. There's something comforting about the way the silence settles now. Not like before, when it felt like the pause between ideas. No, this is different. This silence feels full, like a room with velvet curtains and old friends who no longer need to talk. You lie back again, and the earth welcomes you like it's been waiting. The sky overhead is soft and pear-colored. A bird flutters somewhere far off, not so much flying as gently reconsidering its place in the air. And there, off to the left, is a tree. It's not a handsome tree, not in the traditional sense. The trunk bends at odd angles, like it tried to grow in 5 directions and gave up halfway. The bark is knotted. One branch sticks out sideways like it's making a rude gesture. No one could build a table from it. No one could carve it into anything useful. It would fail every inspection. And yet, here it stands, old and untouched, offering shade, a home to squirrels, a landing pad for dreams. Zhuangzi told the story of such a tree. In fact, it was one of his favorites. A carpenter once came across a strange, enormous tree growing beside a shrine. The carpenter's apprentice marveled at its size and beauty. "Master," he said, "why don't we cut it down and make something grand?" But the carpenter only sneered. "This tree is useless," he replied. "Its wood is too twisted, tools would break on it. It won't do." That night, the tree appeared to the carpenter in a dream and whispered, "You call me useless, but look, because of that, I'm still here." And indeed, trees that are useful get chopped down, turned into ships and houses. But this one, it lives, gnarled and peaceful. You run a hand along the bark now. It's rough, cool, patient. You feel for a moment like the tree is nodding. Zhuangzi loved this idea that being useless by conventional standards could be the deepest kind of wisdom, that not fitting in could be a form of survival, a kind of gentle rebellion. In today's world, that hits differently. We're taught to optimize ourselves, market our talents, become assets. But what if your greatest value is the space you hold simply by being? What if rest isn't laziness, but sacred defiance? There's a scholar, an old one, who once tried to rationalize Zhuangzi's tree story. He suggested it wasn't really about uselessness, but strategic retreat. The tree plays dead, he wrote. It survives by pretending to be unimportant. But that feels a little too clever, doesn't it? Because maybe the tree isn't pretending. Maybe it really doesn't want to be a ship. Maybe it doesn't dream of furniture. Maybe it just likes growing crooked and whispering to the moss. You lie beside it now, half in its shade. The trunk curves like a smile over your shoulder. You think of all the ways you've tried to be useful lately. All the expectations, all the tiny performances that make up a day. And suddenly, they feel heavy. Not bad, just unnecessary. You're allowed to be this tree sometimes, allowed to bend strangely, allowed to do nothing and still offer shade. Zhuangzi might say, to be truly whole, you must let go of the need to be used. But of course, philosophers still argue about what he meant. Was it a critique of Confucian duty, a satire of ambition, a poetic call for idleness? Maybe all of that, maybe none. That's the thing with Zhuangzi, his stories aren't puzzles to solve, they're windows to sit beside. A breeze kicks up now, brushing across your face. A single leaf lets go from the highest branch and spirals slowly down. Not quite falling, just reconsidering its altitude. You watch it. It lands beside you like a sigh. You remember a moment from long ago, maybe childhood, sitting beneath a tree just like this one, watching ants do whatever it is ants do, with no deadlines, no productivity apps, no performance reviews, just presence. And maybe that's what this tree really offers. Not escape, not even answers. Just the reminder that it's okay to be slow, to be strange, to be not useful in all the right ways. You sit back up, brush dirt from your palms, look once more at the tree. It hasn't moved. It doesn't need to. And neither do you. The light is slipping into that golden hour softness, now edges dissolving, colors warming like tea steeping in late sunlight. You move through the landscape slowly, not out of fatigue, but because there's no reason to hurry. Every leaf seems to know that. Every breeze is a gentle suggestion to pause. The path, if you can call it that, is no longer straight. It loops and curves without concern. You pass a stone, then another, then circle back past the same tree you passed 10 minutes ago. But it's not the same tree anymore. And you're not quite the same you. Zhuangzi might call this wandering without intention. It's one of the most misunderstood elements of his thought. People hear aimlessness and imagine laziness. But Zhuangzi's wandering was rich, alive, not a denial of meaning, but a refusal to chain it. You stumble lightly over a root, a mossy one. You laugh. not a loud laugh, just a soft exhale through the nose. It feels honest. Zhuangzi believed that the sage doesn't follow maps, doesn't force outcomes, doesn't try to control what cannot be controlled. He called this way of being Wu Wei, often translated as non-action. But that's misleading. It's not about doing nothing. It's about not forcing, about moving like water moves effortless, but powerful. Modern life, by contrast, loves a good GPS. It asks you, at every moment, where are you going? What's your goal? Are you achieving it? But Zhuangzi might say, does the wind need a destination? You reach a clearing with nothing in it, not even a bench, just space. It's delightful, a place designed for nothing. You sit cross-legged in the middle, just because you can. There's a tale Zhuangzi once told about a man who spent his life learning everything history, rituals, names of stars. He grew old, heavy with knowledge, but in his final days, he met a hermit who lived in a cave with no books, no lists, no answers. The hermit told stories with no endings, laughed for no reason, and fed birds from his palm. The old man, for the first time in his life, didn't know what to say. Zhuangzi ends the story not with a conclusion, but a question: who truly lived? It's the kind of story that sticks with you, that opens like a flower when you're not looking. You lie back again, the sky now a painting of pale lavender and slow-burning orange. A few stars are practicing their entrances. You think about your own maps, plans, dreams, checklists that march you through days like little toy soldiers. Some have served you, some have caged you, and here, under this open sky, you wonder, what if you let one fall away? Just one. There's no ceremony to it, you just let go. It floats upward, like a paper crane. The ground beneath you does not judge. The stars above do not ask for proof. You hear a voice again, maybe your own, maybe Zhuangzi's. It says, to wander is not to be lost, it is to be free. You remember a scholar once critiqued Zhuangzi for being anti-teleological, which is an academic way of saying he doesn't care where things are going. Exactly. Zhuangzi might reply, because things are already going, always, without your permission. Even the stars move, even the dust breathes. In one of his weirder stories, Zhuangzi imagines a creature with 1,000 legs that suddenly becomes self-conscious. How do I walk, it asks itself. And the moment it tries to think it through how each leg moves, in what order it collapses, tangled in its own logic. Some truths can't be reasoned into being. They can only be lived. You sit up slowly. A cricket is chirping somewhere. The night is nearly here. The clearing seems to breathe. You don't feel lost. You don't feel found either. You just are, and maybe that's all you ever needed to be. A lantern sways ahead. It dangles lazily from a crooked pole, lighting nothing in particular. The flame inside flickers in the soft evening air, casting a little golden aura around a figure sitting beneath it. You approach without needing to ask why. The ground makes a gentle crunch beneath your steps' soft twigs, sleeping leaves. And there, under the lamp, are two people. One is Zhuangzi, reclining with a teacup and half a grin. The other, someone in a scholar's robe, waving their arms in frustration, as if attempting to pin down clouds with their sleeves. They're in the middle of an argument, or maybe it's a performance, or maybe it's just a game. But if right is right, then wrong must be wrong, the scholar insists. Zhuangzi yawns, and yet, he says, sipping, the fish still swim. You sit cross-legged nearby. Neither of them acknowledges you, which is perfect. The lantern hums faintly. The debate rolls on what is truth, what is knowledge, whether opposites are real or just illusions dressed up in syllables. The scholar recites maxims, clutches scrolls, gestures to the stars. Zhuangzi counters with a shrug. a smirk, a story about a man who mistook his own hat for a turtle. You smile. This is classic Zhuangzi. He loved absurd arguments, especially when they were treated too seriously. He once told of two philosophers who debated for hours whether a tree falling in a forest made a sound if no one was there to hear it. At the end, Zhuangzi declared, "The tree doesn't care." There's something deliciously light about his resistance to logic's grip, not because he disliked reason, but because he saw how quickly it tangled itself into knots, how easily we mistake cleverness for clarity. In the West, philosophy often aims for structure, systems, coherence. Thinkers like Descartes, Kant, even Plato, they built cathedrals of thought, intricate, impressive, monumental. Zhuangzi, he built a wind chime out of bones and riddles and let the breeze decide the tune. It's not that he was anti-thought, he just knew its limits. He knew that language can never quite touch what matters most. A frog croaks in the distance. Maybe it agrees. You remember one of Zhuangzi's parables about a man who, after years of intense study, believed he could define the Tao. He proudly presented his theory diagrams, charts, footnotes. Zhuangzi listened patiently, nodded, and then released a firefly into the air. "See," he said, "it glows, not because it explains anything, but because it does." The scholar was not amused. Philosophers still don't quite know what to do with that story. Some interpret it as mockery, others as reverence. A few try to rationalize the firefly. Zhuangzi, presumably, is still laughing. The argument under the lantern has ended, or perhaps it evaporated. The scholar sighs and walks off into the trees, still muttering about syllogisms and truth tables. The Zhuangzi watches him go, then offers you the teacup. You drink. It tastes like pine needles in moonlight. Not bad. "Do you ever win these arguments?" you ask. He shrugs. "That depends. What game are we playing?" It's easy to mistake Zhuangzi's lightness for dismissiveness, but there's something deeply compassionate about it. He doesn't laugh at you. He laughs with the universe, because we're all a little absurd, aren't we? Wearing hats full of eels and arguing with shadows. And maybe that's okay. You stand again, walking away from the lantern's pool of light. The world is a little darker, a little deeper. The stars have arrived, bold, lazy things, sprinkled across the sky like someone got distracted mid-design. There's no path now, but you don't mind. You're wandering, aimless, alive. And somewhere, you hear Zhuangzi's voice, maybe behind you, maybe inside you. Even the cleverest net cannot catch the wind. Night has fully arrived now, but it doesn't feel dark. The stars stretch in all directions like glimmering brush strokes across deep silk. The air is cooler, gentle. Everything moves a little slower, including your thoughts. You walk through a meadow that wasn't here before. It's wide and soft, lit by moonlight so tender it feels like memory. Somewhere nearby, a cricket offers a thoughtful rhythm. You follow it not as a command, but the way your breath follows quiet. Ahead, a sign carved into driftwood leans against a stone. The characters are ancient, worn smooth by wind and maybe laughter. You lean down. It reads, "Tao is not a thing you can know." Well, that's certainly direct. You sit beside the stone and stretch your legs out. The grass is soft, forgiving. You let your fingers brush against it absently. It feels like the back of a sleeping cat. You exhale. Zhuangzi never tried to define the Tao. He wasn't interested in doctrines or tidy definitions. In fact, he insisted that the moment you try to name the Tao, you've already missed it. The Tao that can be spoken, he wrote probably with a wry smile, is not the constant Tao. It's funny. Really. He spent his life writing about something he claimed can't be written about. Modern philosophers call this a paradox. They wring their hands over whether it's coherent. Is it self-defeating? Can you describe what cannot be described without becoming nonsense? Zhuangzi might say, sure, why not? Nonsense is fun. He didn't see paradox as a problem. He saw it as a doorway. When words fail, something softer can sneak through, like laughter, like silence, like the wind brushing your cheek without asking permission. You lie back in the grass and watch the stars shift slowly, quietly, as if they're trying not to wake the moon. Somewhere inside you, something loosens, not in a dramatic way, just a little less tightness around needing to understand. Because what if knowing isn't the goal? In one story, Zhuangzi talks about a man who became obsessed with understanding the Tao. He read everything, consulted scholars, fasted for days, meditated on mountaintops. Eventually, he collapsed in confusion. His friend found him and offered him a bowl of soup. The man sipped it, sighed, and said, "Ah, now I remember what the Tao tastes like." There's something beautiful about that, isn't there? That the taste of something simple, warmth, nourishment, presence can carry more meaning than 1,000 words. That the Tao lives not in definitions, but in soup, and walking, and watching stars with no intention of naming them. You glance up again. The sky doesn't care whether you understand it. It just shines. A breeze lifts a lock of your hair and sets it gently back down. You remember, vaguely, how often people chase clarity like a runaway balloon. We think, if we can just understand, just pin everything down, then we'll feel safe. But Zhuangzi would ask, has knowing ever really made you certain? He wasn't anti-intellectual. He simply knew that knowledge has its place, and also its limits. It's like the finger pointing at the moon, important, useful, even necessary. But it isn't the moon. And you're lying under it now. You don't need a finger. You don't need a map. You don't even need a metaphor. Just this moment, this breath, this cool, enormous sky. There's a quiet hum in your chest, peaceful, like a thought that forgot what it was trying to say. Zhuangzi didn't want disciples. He didn't write manifestos. He told strange stories about men who turned into fish and fish who turned into laughter. Because some truths aren't taught, they're felt. And maybe you feel it now. Not the Tao itself, because that can't be grasped, but the space it opens up when you stop grasping. The meadow behind you fades like a tide going out. The stars remain, but now you're walking through a soft corridor of reeds, tall, rustling, silvered at the edges by moonlight. Each step feels slower, not heavier, just more curious, like you're being walked, not walking. You notice something odd. The reeds are whispering, not words, exactly more like the rhythm of breath when someone dreams deeply. Ahead, a man stands with his hands behind his back. He's gazing at the sky but seems to sense you coming. His robe is simple, his presence quieter than shadow. He turns slightly and smiles not at you, but at something just past you, something maybe only he can see. This is the man who forgot he was blind. It's one of Zhuangzi's stranger stories about a man who, in childhood, lost his sight. For years he struggled, fumbled, cursed fate, but eventually he forgot what sight was. He stopped searching, and in forgetting, he found new ways of knowing through the sound of birdsong, the feel of moss, the way air changed before rain. He no longer called himself blind. He no longer needed the word. Zhuangzi tells this story not to romanticize blindness, but to suggest a deeper release. What if forgetting is not always loss, but freedom? What if letting go of labels opens us to new ways of being? Modern philosophy, especially in the West, is often about memory, reason, holding tight to identity. Know thyself, says the Delphic oracle. But Zhuangzi might chuckle and whisper, forget thyself just for a little while. See what's left. The man beside you kneels and presses his ear to the ground. You imitate him, unsure why, but then you hear it too, the tiny rustling of something underground, a mole, perhaps, or roots moving, or the dream of the earth itself. You sit beside him, no words, just the hum of unseen things. There's a moment you recall, maybe not yours, maybe borrowed, a time you forgot a grief long enough to laugh, a day you forgot ambition long enough to rest, a night you forgot who you were supposed to be, and just were. Zhuangzi called this great transformation, not because you change into something else, but because everything changes when you stop clinging. In one tale, a man woke up and could not remember his own story. No name, no past, just the wind and the sky. At first, he panicked. Then he danced. Philosophers argue about that one. Was it a warning against memory loss? A metaphor for spiritual awakening? A satire? No one agrees. Zhuangzi might grin and say, "Why choose just one?" The man beside you finally stands. His eyes are closed, but he moves like a dancer who knows every step by heart. He walks through the reeds, silent, sure, and disappears like a breath. You remain watching, listening. It feels good to let things go just for now, to set aside your name, your plans, your story, to sit in the dark without fear, to trust that you're still here, even without your definitions. Zhuangzi didn't believe in clinging to roles. He thought they made us stiff, like puppets trying too hard to impress the puppeteer. But you're breathing now without an audience, sitting in moonlight like it's always been yours. And in this space, this forgetting, you begin to notice things. The sound of the night insects, the way your shoulders have softened, the warmth in your palms. None of these require a name. Even the sky seems to exhale. Even your mind feels roomy, like someone opened a window and let the dust slip out. There's no need to decide what this means. Not now. Just feel the air moving through you. Just forget. And in that forgetting, remember something deeper. There's a low hill now, gentle, like a thought that rises without reason. You wander up it slowly, not out of effort, but because the slope invites you to move at the pace of moss. The top is bare, just sky, just stars, just you in the wide hush of everything. And somewhere on the far side, you hear snoring. Not the angry kind, not the nasal chainsaw variety. This is a slow, peaceful rhythm, like a grandfather dozing on a porch. You follow it with a half smile. And there, curled beneath a crooked tree, is Zhuangzi out cold, mouth slightly open, face tilted toward the moon. You sit beside him. He doesn't stir. His fingers twitch, just a little, as if dreaming of a joke he never quite finished telling. And somehow, it makes perfect sense. Even sages, after all, need sleep. Zhuangzi was never interested in being revered. He mistrusted sages who polish their halos. He once said, "The true sage wears their virtue like loose robes, comfortable or breezy, able to laugh at themselves." He even questioned whether sages existed at all. Maybe sage is just a label people give to someone after they've died, or someone who knows how to nod wisely while actually thinking about dumplings. In one passage, he tells of a man who's praised by his village as the wisest of them all. Every day, people ask him questions deep, difficult questions about life, death, meaning. The man listens carefully, nods thoughtfully, and says, "I don't know." Every time, same response. Eventually, they build him a shrine. Scholars call this Zhuangzi's skeptical mysticism, a refusal to claim certainty, paired with a playful reverence for mystery. But others find it frustrating. Is he saying we can't know anything they ask? Is this just elegant nihilism? Maybe, but probably not. Zhuangzi wasn't despairing. He was dancing. He didn't reject truth. He just didn't pretend it lived in syllogisms and syllables. He found it in rivers and laughter and frogs that recite poetry to the moon. You look at him now, still snoring softly. There's something beautiful in it. Not laziness, not withdrawal, just peace. The kind of peace that comes from no longer needing to win, to prove, to teach. Even when he was awake, Zhuangzi was more dream than doctrine. There's another story he tells about a sage who, after a lifetime of study, is asked what the Tao really is. The sage considers it for a long time, then sneezes and walks into the woods. That's the whole story. Philosophers debate its meaning to this day. You lie down next to him now, the cool grass like a quilt stitched by silence. You hear his breath, even and slow, and your own starts to match it. Without thinking, you fall into the same rhythm. Inhale, pause, exhale, forget. You realize you've been doing this, whatever this is, for a while now. Not quite seeking, not quite arriving, just being, and it's enough. Zhuangzi stirs briefly. Still here, he murmurs. You nod, though his eyes are still closed. Good, he says, so am I. He slips back into sleep. And you lie beside him, somewhere between thought and dream, unsure if you're awake or remembering. Because in Zhuangzi's world, there's no clear line between sleeping and waking, between wisdom and nonsense, between sage and frog. There's only this breath, stars, the weight of your body resting on a hill that asks nothing of you. No doctrine, no dogma, just this. Even sages snore through truth. And maybe that's what makes it real. You wake or dream you're waking. The hill still cradles you, its curve soft against your spine, as if the land itself has grown fond of your presence. Zhuangzi is gone now, or maybe he never was. The only sound is the hush of the tall grass swaying and the occasional sigh of the stars. You rise slowly, not because you have to, but because the wind nudges you. You follow its direction like a paper boat. Before long, you find yourself in a clearing filled with low-lying clouds not above you, but around you. Ground fog, thick and silver. You wade into it as if stepping into a dream. You can only see a few feet ahead, and yet you're not afraid. The mist is not hiding anything malicious. It's simply indifferent, or maybe kind. Zhuangzi might say clouds don't regret their shape. He would mean it, because regret implies that there was a better shape, a more ideal curve to one's path. But clouds shift because that's what clouds do. They take the form of the sky and dissolve when it's time. No grudge, no grasp. You breathe it in cool and damp. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaks, or maybe a bell rings, or maybe your thoughts are making sounds of their own now. There's a story Zhuangzi tells, not often quoted in textbooks, about a man who tried to contain a cloud in a jar. He believed that if he could just hold on to it, he could study it, learn from it, preserve its beauty forever. But when he opened the jar the next morning, it was empty. Of course it was. You pass an old bench carved from driftwood. There's no plaque, no inscription. It sits like it has always been there, which perhaps it has. You sit. The fog curls around you gently like a cat nesting at your feet. The world is quieter here. Thoughts rise, then melt. You let them. No need to grab them by the tail. In Western philosophy, clarity is king. We're told to define, to separate, to name the edges of everything. But Zhuangzi didn't care for sharp lines. He favored the soft blur. He thought the attempt to nail down life was the root of suffering. Why? Because life doesn't hold still. It's a stream, a fog, a moving shape that shifts when you stare too hard. Try to grab it, and it slips through your fingers. Try to name it, and it becomes smaller than it really is. You recall the story of the fish who didn't know it was wet, and you wonder how many things you're still swimming in without noticing. Expectations, stories, old ideas about who you are or should be. The fog thickens now, but you're not lost. You're exactly as found as you need to be. Every step you take is both a question and an answer. Both. A philosopher once tried to challenge Zhuangzi by saying, If everything flows and changes, how can we make decisions? How can we live wisely? Zhuangzi replied, Live like the wind, move without resistance, let wisdom be the space between thoughts. It sounds poetic, maybe evasive, but maybe it's just true. Because you've noticed it, haven't you? The moments when you stop trying to be anything and just are, when you're not performing, not chasing, not narrating yourself, those moments feel the most alive. You run your hand through the mist beside you. It parts without effort, no resistance, no plan. And then, just as quietly, it reforms. Zhuangzi might say that's what virtue looks like. Not rigid righteousness, but fluid alignment. A way of being that doesn't disturb the world, yet touches it with gentle presence. You close your eyes. The breeze combs through your hair. You feel the stillness not as emptiness, but fullness. Not silent, but quietly humming with meaning that refuses to be captured. There is nothing to solve here. There is nothing to fix. The fog is not a problem. It's the teaching. Let yourself shift. Let yourself blur. Let the sharp outlines soften. Clouds don't regret their shape, and neither should you. The fog thins slowly, like an old song fading into the next. You keep walking not because there's a destination, but because stillness has now flowed into motion. The ground is soft, the world feels kind. And just ahead, resting in the middle of a mossy field, is a frog. At least, it looks like a frog, but it's far too large, big as a wheelbarrow, with eyes that seem older than language. It's not menacing. In fact, it seems a little bored. You pause. The frog does not. It yawns. And then it speaks. I once ate a man, it says, voice like a cello dragged slowly across velvet. You blink. The frog blinks back. Zhuangzi told a story not too different from this. In his version, a man dreams he's being swallowed by a giant frog, but he's calm about it, curious, even. The frog isn't hungry, it's simply following its nature, and the man isn't afraid because he's not quite sure he's real. Philosophers have argued over that one endlessly. Is it about surrender? Is it about ego death? Is it just a dream? You're not sure either, but the frog is still here, watching, waiting. I didn't digest him. The frog adds, he just became part of the dream. And you nod, as if this makes sense, because in a Zhuangzi story, it somehow does. He loved tales that turned logic upside down, tales that ask, what if the things you fear aren't dangerous but simply unfamiliar? What if the monster isn't here to harm you, but to stretch the edges of your awareness? The frog blinks again, slowly. Do you believe you're awake? It asks. You hesitate, then laugh. I think so. It croaks softly. Thinking can be dangerous. You sit cross-legged in the grass. The frog closes its eyes. Zhuangzi would say this is a moment of transformation. Not dramatic, not mythic, just quiet. A moment when something old dissolves an assumption, a role, a certainty, and something freer takes its place. In the West, we often picture transformation as fire and thunder, the phoenix rising, the curtain pulled back, but Zhuangzi would offer you a pond instead, a soft blur, a question without urgency. There's another tale he told of a man who studied so hard to master reality that he began to see everything as threat or trick. One day, he looked into a mirror and saw a stranger. He reached out to touch his own face and found it soft and unfamiliar. He didn't panic. He simply smiled and said, "Ah, so this is who I've become." And then he made tea. You asked the frog, "Am I dreaming you, or are you dreaming me?" The frog opens one eye. Does it matter? You suppose not. The field is quiet now. A few insects hum their evening songs. The grass leans gently in the wind, like it's listening to a story only the soil can hear. You lie down. Above you, clouds drift without forming shapes, just motion, just softness. You realize how often you've looked for meaning in things, symbols, signs, hints from the universe. And maybe that's beautiful, but maybe, tonight, you don't need it. Maybe the frog isn't a metaphor. Maybe it's just a frog, a sleepy, unbothered frog with ancient eyes and impeccable timing. You yawn, matching its earlier one. Your jaw cracks softly, like an exhale in slow motion. The frog turns and hops lazily toward the tree line. It doesn't vanish, it just becomes part of the night. And you stay right here, in the field, in the not knowing. With the soft grass beneath you, the starlight above, and a smile that doesn't need a reason. You remain in the field for a long while, listening to nothing in particular. Eventually, a breeze stirs your curiosity. You follow it, not out of intention, but because moving feels like the natural extension of stillness. The field gives way to a small path, almost shy in how it reveals itself, more suggestion than trail. It leads you toward a small cottage. Thatched roof, leaning walls, no sign of maintenance or ambition. Smoke curls from the chimney like a sleepy question. You push open the creaky door and step inside. It's a mess. Scrolls everywhere, ink-stained robes tossed over chairs, candles burned down to puddles, books stacked precariously on top of each other like an architectural dare. And in the middle of it all, a scholar. His hair is wild, his eyes are red-rimmed, and he's surrounded by diagrams and philosophical instruments, brass compasses, ink brushes, cracked abacuses. He looks up from a scroll and squints. "Have you seen my concept of meaning?" he asks. You blink. "No," you say gently. "I had it just yesterday." He mutters, shuffling papers. "It was right next to my treatise on cosmic teleology." He continues digging. Zhuangzi told a story about a scholar like this one who drowned not in water, but in meaning. He sought the truth so intensely that he lost the ability to see what was in front of him. Words became walls, symbols became shackles. The scholar in the story eventually renounced his library and went to live under a tree, but not this one, not yet. Here, the man mutters about objective categories and absolute frameworks. He draws overlapping circles with shaking fingers. There must be a unifying structure, he whispers, a way to reconcile identity with essence. You sit on a dusty cushion and watch. It's hard not to feel a kind of sympathy. You've been this scholar before, searching for answers, for clarity, for something sharp enough to cut through the chaos of being alive. The scholar is not foolish. He is you in a different form. But there's a tension here. Because Zhuangzi didn't reject knowledge, but he feared what happens when it becomes obsession, when it clutters the mind until there's no space left for unknowing. Modern thinkers wrestle with this idea. Some say Zhuangzi was anti-intellectual, others say he was deeply intellectual, but with a sense of humor, a philosopher who believed the mind is useful as long as it remembers it's just part of the dance. You ask the scholar, "Do you ever rest?" He pauses, only between thoughts. You nod. "And when do the thoughts stop?" He looks at you, blinking like you've asked a riddle. Then he laughs, a short, surprised bark. They don't, he says, but I suppose I do. He sits down beside you, quiet, maybe for the first time in weeks. One of the scrolls slips off the desk and lands softly on the floor, words spilling open like petals. The fire crackles. You glance at the page. It's filled with beautiful calligraphy lines and lines of precise, earnest reasoning. But near the bottom, scrawled in a different hand, is a single phrase, "The fish still swim." You smile. The scholar sees it, too. He doesn't say anything, just closes his eyes for a moment. And for the first time, the cottage feels calm. Zhuangzi might say, when the mind tries too hard to hold the world, the hands forget how to feel it. You rise quietly, leaving the scholar to his stillness. As you close the door behind you, you don't feel disdain. You feel softness, a kind of love for all the ways we try to make sense of this vast, absurd, breathtaking life. You walk back into the night. The stars remain, the wind hums, and somewhere in your heart, a little more space has opened, not filled with answers, but ready. The night deepens, not darker, just quieter, like a room in which everyone has fallen asleep except the wind. The stars have softened, blurring at the edges. You walk slowly now, the kind of slow that isn't about speed at all. It's about savoring. Each step is an exhale. You find a wide stone, warm from the sun that left hours ago. You sit and wait for nothing. That's the practice, really. Zhuangzi had a name for it, Zhuangzi, sitting and forgetting. A strange phrase, isn't it? Sitting and forgetting what? Your name, your obligations, the password to your email. Maybe especially that. Zhuangzi is the kind of forgetting that opens something deeper, not an absence, but a clearing, a deliberate uncramming of the soul, a silence so wide it echoes. There's a story Zhuangzi tells about a man who practiced sitting and forgetting for years. One day, when asked what he had forgotten, the man replied, "I've forgotten myself," and smiled. Western thinkers have a hard time with this idea. Forgetting yourself sounds like erasing something essential, but for Zhuangzi, forgetting the self isn't destruction, it's rest. It's stepping out of the costume for a while, loosening the narrative, taking off the mask and realizing your face was never the point. You close your eyes now. The breeze brushes past, playfully tugging at your sleeve. You don't respond. You don't have to. Thoughts rise. Of course they do. A memory of a conversation from earlier today. A to-do list item you didn't cross off. The slight irritation from an email that used too many exclamation points. And you smile at them, gently, like butterflies landing on your knee. They aren't bad, just noisy. You let them lift away. And what's left? Just this, breathing, sitting, forgetting. You feel the ground beneath you not as something separate, but something shared. You're not resting on the earth, you're resting with it. Zhuangzi once described the sage as someone who becomes a companion of the seasons, not resisting the turning of the world, not trying to make summer last forever, or fight off winter like an enemy, just flowing, just being, like a tree that doesn't argue with autumn. In that sense, Zhuangzi isn't passivity, it's attunement. It's listening so deeply that you stop needing to speak. You open your eyes briefly. The night has thickened. The stars are still whispering, but you don't need to decode them. Somewhere in your chest, you feel the absence of striving. It's not empty. It's full of breath, full of space, full of the kind of silence that carries music you don't need to hear to feel. There's another tale, this one less known, about a man who went into the forest to seek wisdom. He fasted, he meditated, he studied cloud movements and tree bark, but nothing came. Finally, he gave up, sat down, forgot why he came. And in that moment, a sparrow landed on his knee. He said he learned more from that weightless second than from years of questions. You sit now, as he did. The sparrow may not come, but the forgetting that's already happening. Not forgetting in the way of lost keys or names, but in the way a heavy bag is forgotten once set down. You exhale again, and notice that it's the first time you've truly felt the exhale, not the idea of it, not the performance, but the quiet doing of it. The stars watch. You sit and forget and smile. You're not sure how long you've been sitting there. Time has folded in on itself like a blanket left on the edge of a dream. Eventually, you rise, not because you're done, but because your legs decide it's time to stretch. The stars haven't moved much, or maybe they have, and you just moved with them. The stone stays behind, holding the echo of your shape like a polite host. You walk again, and then you see it. Another tree. You pause, not out of reverence, but out of recognition, because this tree is strange. Its trunk twists like a dancer mid-spin. Its bark is gnarled, pocked, full of strange knots and loops. The branches stretch in every direction, like they were designed by a child given too much freedom and not enough supervision. It's enormous, and utterly, wonderfully useless. No carpenter would want it. You couldn't build a house with this. You couldn't carve a statue. You couldn't even cut it for firewood, too unpredictable in its growth. It would ruin the saw. And that's precisely why it's still here. Zhuangzi tells the tale of just such a tree so useless, so grotesquely malformed, that it was spared from ever being harvested. It lived and lived and lived. It became a resting place for birds, a shade for travelers, a shelter for insects and philosophers in dreams. You step beneath its wide, awkward canopy. The ground here is soft and uneven, dimpled with roots. You sit again, leaning against its bulky trunk. It doesn't creak, it doesn't judge. It just is. And now you see what Zhuangzi was trying to show you. That in a world obsessed with productivity, value, purpose, sometimes the greatest thing you can be is entirely, gloriously, functionless. Not forever, but enough. You reach out and touch the bark. It's coarse, but there's warmth in it. Age, story. It feels like touching a forgotten part of yourself, the one that didn't need to perform. There's a quiet rebellion here. Not loud, not angry, just steady. This tree doesn't care if you understand it, doesn't care if it's admired. It's not trying to go viral. It's not optimizing its growth strategy. It just grew, however it wanted, and in doing so, it survived. You wonder how much of your life has been shaped to fit. How often have you pruned your own limbs to seem more straight, more refined, more useful? And what has been lost in that trimming? Zhuangzi would smile here. He might say, the straight tree is the first to be chopped. The bent tree lives to dance. He wasn't calling for chaos. He wasn't rejecting all order. But he was inviting you to consider maybe your crookedness is the most sacred part of you. Maybe your softness, your slowness, your refusal to fit the mold, that's what makes you worthy of shade and rest. Philosophers still argue over whether Zhuangzi meant this as satire. Was he mocking usefulness, critiquing Confucian efficiency, or just playing with metaphor? No one agrees. The tree doesn't mind. You close your eyes beneath its canopy. You can feel its age, its patience. No striving here, no 5-year plans, just roots and sky. Somewhere overhead, a night bird calls out once, then goes quiet. You lie back in the grass, not useful, just whole. You wake, or something like waking. The world is quiet but not still. It hums, the kind of hum you feel more than hear like the sound of distance, or dreams adjusting their furniture. The tree is behind you now, or maybe you've carried it with you. You're walking through tall grass again, silvered in moonlight, your feet bare and sure. Each blade brushes your ankles with a kind of sleepy affection. You let it, and then you see it again. That butterfly. It flutters just ahead of you, dipping low over the grass, wings moving like breath, yellow or maybe pale blue. It refuses to be definite. It lands briefly on a reed, tilts its head if butterflies even have heads, and seems to look at you. You stop, because you know this isn't just a butterfly. This is the butterfly, the one from the dream, the one Zhuangzi once was, or wasn't, or maybe it dreamed him. Maybe it's dreaming you now. That's the riddle, isn't it? Zhuangzi once wrote, "I dreamed I was a butterfly, fluttering here and there, completely unaware I was Zhuangzi. Then I awoke, and lo, now I am Zhuangzi again. But which is real? Am I a man who dreamed of being a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming it is a man?" Even now, centuries later, philosophers debate this. Was it a commentary on the unreliability of perception, a spiritual metaphor for transformation, a proto-postmodern nod at identity's fluidity? Zhuangzi never clarified. That would have ruined the fun. The butterfly lifts off the reed and drifts upward in a lazy spiral. You follow it not to catch, just to stay near. There's no fear in it, no urgency, just movement. And in its motion, something stirs in you, because the butterfly isn't asking a question. You are. The butterfly just is. You remember a modern philosopher once insisting, the point is to determine which state is real. But Zhuangzi might say, what if the distinction itself is part of the dream? You walk a little further. The landscape is shifting again subtly, softly. Trees bend in impossible directions. The moon pulses slightly, as if inhaling. Everything is both familiar and strange, as dreams often are. You begin to wonder, what is the self that watches all this? The one asking, the one remembering. And the answer comes not in words, but in the absence of them. You're the dreamer, and the dreamed. The butterfly lands on your shoulder, light as breath. It stays there, its wings gently opening and closing in time with your heart. Zhuangzi never tried to pin the dream down. He didn't say it meant we're all illusions. He just asked, what if you've mistaken the edges of your awareness for the edges of the world? You close your eyes, and in the quiet behind your thoughts, you realize something not in the mind, but in the marrow. You don't need to solve the riddle. You are the riddle, and you're beautiful, and brief, and endlessly unfolding. The butterfly lifts off your shoulder again, drifts upward into the stars, and you let it go. Because in a world like this, knowing isn't the point. Being is. The butterfly disappears into the night, and you're left with the feeling that something just laughed but gently, not at you, around you. You walk onward, guided by nothing and everything. There's no path, and yet your feet always find someplace soft to land. The moon slips behind a cloud. You're not alone, but no one else is here. Then, without warning, you arrive in a graveyard. Not the somber kind. This one is lively. Bones peek from the ground, not in horror, but in contentment. Some are propped against stones like old friends having a chat. Others lie scattered, half covered in moss, like they fell asleep mid-thought. One skull wears a straw hat, another balances a teacup on its crown. And seated in the middle of it all, cross-legged and barefoot, is Zhuangzi. He's humming something tuneless, carving lines into a flat stone with a twig. You sit beside him. He doesn't look up. Good party, he says. You glance around. It's peaceful. He nods. That's what I meant. In Taoism, and especially for Zhuangzi, death was not the enemy. He didn't resist it, mourn it, or try to explain it away. He saw it as a change of form, a shift in the flow, like mist becoming rain, like music becoming silence. There's a story he told about the death of his wife. His friend came to console him and was stunned to find Zhuangzi sitting on the ground, drumming on a pot and singing. "You've lost your wife," the friend said. "Shouldn't you be grieving?" Zhuangzi replied, "At first, yes. But then I thought before she was born, she was nothing. Now she's returned to nothing. Why should I be upset that the circle has closed?" It's not a cold idea. It's a tender one. A reminder that the end is not a punishment. It's just a turning. Modern philosophers squirm at this. Too passive, they say, too mystical. But Zhuangzi would shrug. "You're thinking like a live person," he'd reply. You look around the graveyard again. No sorrow here, no marble monuments, just the bones of people who, perhaps, have forgotten they were people. You ask Zhuangzi, do they still think? He grins, not in the way you mean, but maybe they remember how to laugh. You spot two femurs crossed like legs leaning against a tree. They seem perfectly at ease. Death, in Zhuangzi's world, isn't an event. It's a rhythm, a continuation, a shift in shape that reveals the dream behind the dream. He once said, "Life arises from death, and death from life, like the succession of day and night." You run your fingers across the mossy top of a gravestone. It's warm, oddly. Or maybe that's your hand. Do you think they miss being alive, you ask? Zhuangzi chuckles. Only the ones who haven't realized they're dead. That one hits differently. He continues drawing lines on the stone. "I don't fear death," he says. "What worries me more is never having truly lived, being so busy grasping at permanence that I forget to enjoy the drift." You nod, the bones nod, or maybe that's the breeze. There's an owl in the tree overhead. It blinks slowly, approvingly. You lie down next to a skeleton. It doesn't move, but it doesn't mind your company either. Zhuangzi leans back on his elbows and sighs. People worry too much about what comes after. They forget to enjoy what comes with. You watch a firefly hover over one of the skulls. It flashes once, then again. A tiny lantern for no one. And in this cemetery of laughter and rest, you feel something lift. A fear, perhaps, or a story. Or simply the need to keep pretending that everything must last. You close your eyes. Not to sleep, not to hide, just to listen. Because even the dead have stories, and some of them are hilarious. The graveyard fades behind you, not with drama, but like a song ending mid-chord. You walk gone, not lighter exactly, but less concerned about the weight. Death, it seems, is not so much a wall as it is a soft turn in the path. The wind is cooler now. It plays with your sleeves. You let it. The land opens into a gentle slope lined with lanterns, their lights flickering like tired thoughts trying to stay awake. You pause before one and watch its flame lean toward the glass, then away, as if whispering to itself. And somewhere behind that flicker of silence, the question rises. What happens when you know too much? You chuckle quietly, because Zhuangzi had thoughts on this too. Of course he did. There's an image he returned to again and again, that the mind, when too full, becomes like a cluttered house, no room for the wind to pass through. You may have acquired knowledge, but have you made space for wisdom? You reach the top of the slope and find a chair, not a throne. Not symbolic, just a chair. Someone has left a teacup on the armrest. It's still warm. You sit and think, because thinking is okay. Zhuangzi never said to banish thought. He only warned about its grip. When thinking becomes a compulsion, a fortress, a wall between you and the moment you've traded flow for furniture. In one tale, Zhuangzi tells of a man who studied for decades. He cataloged every truth he could find: ethics, logic, astronomy, metaphysics. His house was stacked with scrolls, his brain heavy with conclusions. But when his daughter brought him a peach, he could not taste it. He was too busy wondering whether the sweetness implied objective goodness or just subjective pleasure conditioned by mammalian reward systems. Zhuangzi ends the story with a shrug. Better to be the person who eats the peach. You glance down at your own hands, empty but steady. There's a stillness now that wasn't there before, not silence, but clarity. Because you've been the overthinker, haven't you? The one who tried to plan joy, the one who wrestled with questions long after they stopped offering answers, the one who stayed up too late searching for the perfect metaphor to explain why metaphors matter. And sometimes it worked, but sometimes it didn't. Sometimes knowledge drowned out presence. Zhuangzi never rejected intellect. He simply saw it as a tool, not a home. Use it, yes, sharpen it, but don't mistake it for the world. He once wrote, "The wise man has knowledge like a knife, but never carries it drawn." You lean back in the chair. Above you, a few stars blink slowly, as if checking in. The sky no longer seems so high. It's more like a ceiling of velvet stitched with pinholes. And in the air, there's space. Not just literal space, thought space, spirit space, the kind of openness that appears only after the mind stops trying to arrange everything into tidy boxes. A leaf drifts by and catches on your sleeve. You let it stay. It doesn't have to mean anything. A modern scholar once tried to summarize Zhuangzi in a single sentence. He believed that certainty is dangerous, and that laughter is wiser than belief. It's a nice sentence. But even that is a bit too neat, isn't it? Because Zhuangzi wouldn't want to be summarized. He'd hand you a parable about a turtle who refused to be polished and a snail who lectured on moral hygiene. And then he'd disappear before you could quote him. You smile. You rise. And you walk back down the slope, leaving the chair behind. Let someone else sit with the warm teacup. Let someone else debate the ethical dimensions of peach eating. You'll eat the peach and forget what you were trying to know. Down the slope, the world opens like a deep breath. You find yourself at the edge of a wide, slow-moving river, the kind that doesn't rush, doesn't chatter. It simply is. The surface reflects the stars so clearly you wonder, just for a moment, if you're walking into the sky. And there, resting at the bank, is a small boat, empty. You step in. The wood creaks beneath your weight, then settles like it expected you. The current catches you without resistance. The boat drifts silently, and you with it. There's no paddle, no direction, and no need. Zhuangzi loved boats, not just as symbols, but as metaphors for a life well lived. A boat that floats by being empty is, to him, a kind of sage. Nothing to lose, nothing to prove. In one story, he describes a man drifting downriver in an empty boat. Suddenly, another boat crashes into him. At first, the man is furious, ready to shout, ready to blame. But then he sees it's empty. No one to blame, no intent. And the anger dissolves. Zhuangzi's point wasn't just about traffic etiquette, it was about ego. When there's no one steering, there's no offense to take. But if the boat had been full, if someone had been driving, how quickly would the story turn? We do this all the time. Don't we react to life as if every bump is personal, as if every misstep has an author, and we must defend our little boat? But what if most boats are empty? You let your finger skim the water. It's cool. It doesn't pull. It just flows around you, like time, like thought, like the Tao. The moon rises higher, its reflection riding alongside yours. You watch the sky ripple in the water and wonder which one is more real. There's a lightness in the boat, not because it's empty of meaning, but because it's free of burden. Zhuangzi believed that the more you cling, the heavier your boat, the more likely you are to sink. He once wrote, "Those who carry nothing are carried by everything." You lie back now, head resting on the wooden curve, the stars wheeling slowly above. There's no hurry, there's not even a destination. The river takes you wherever the river goes, and that's enough. A breeze stirs. The boat tilts gently. Somewhere, a bird cries out a long, slow note, like a memory taking its time. You think about all the things you filled your own boat with over the years. Expectations, roles, self-definitions, the need to be someone. And now, in this drift, you're no one. And it's perfect. Modern thinkers sometimes bristle at this part of Zhuangzi's thought. No self, they say. No control. They worry that it sounds like nihilism, like giving up. But Zhuangzi isn't about giving up. He's about giving in to the flow, to the shape things already want to take, to the truth that trying to steer life like a machine often just leads to crashing into yourself. The river narrows now, then widens. The boat bumps gently into reeds, then drifts free again. You make no corrections, and everything is fine. More than fine. Everything is easy. That's the word. Not lazy, not apathetic, just easy. Because you're not resisting, you're not correcting, you're not explaining or predicting or strategizing. You're empty, which means you're full of space. The boat glides, the river breathes, you float, and whatever comes next, it'll meet you wherever you are, the Taoism. The boat drifts to a stop. Not abruptly, not with ceremony, just gently. It nudges against a stretch of shoreline so subtle it barely announces itself. You step out, barefoot again, into sand that hums faint warmth from a sun long gone. The landscape here is spare, open, a few windswept trees, leaning like they've been in mid-thought for decades. Stones arranged by no one, perfectly placed. Ahead, two figures sit by a fire. Zhuangzi and another person, tall, narrow-faced, wrapped in robes like folded questions. They're not talking, just sipping something from gourd-shaped cups and watching the flames flicker. You sit beside them. They don't greet you, but the silence between you does. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then the tall one says, "Words are like nets." Zhuangzi nods, good for catching things, but the wise one knows when to let the fish go. The other smiles, and when to stop casting entirely. They both chuckle, soft and warm. You blink. This might be lousy, or a dream version of him, or a metaphor in robes. It doesn't matter. The fire crackles, and you understand language has its limits. It's a tool, a lovely one, but it's not the world. It only gestures. Zhuangzi once wrote, "Words are like the pointing finger, but once you see the moon, you don't need the finger." Still, we hold on to the finger, don't we? We polish it, we argue about its angle, we write entire books trying to clarify what exactly it's pointing at. But meanwhile, the moon just shines. You gaze into the fire, sparks rise into the air, dancing briefly before vanishing. You try to describe them in your mind, but every word you grab makes them smaller. So you stop trying. You just watch. The other figure speaks again, voice slow and curved like a river bend. When words fail, he says, "Smile anyway." Zhuangzi grins, leans toward you, and whispers. It drives the logicians mad. You laugh. A real laugh, soft, tired, unguarded. Because it's true. There's a kind of joy that doesn't need vocabulary. A kind of understanding that arrives when the definitions take a nap. Zhuangzi was no enemy of language. He just didn't worship it. He knew that sometimes. The most truthful response isn't a thesis, it's a raised eyebrow, or a quiet nod, or a frog with impeccable timing. Modern thinkers often ask if we abandon language. How can we share ideas? How can we know anything? But maybe knowledge isn't the only goal. Maybe companionship is. Maybe sitting beside someone in shared quiet, watching sparks vanish into sky, is philosophy. You glance up, the moon's back, not full, not perfect, but present. Zhuangzi pokes the fire, sending up a swirl of ash. People want to capture truth in a jar, he says, but the lid never quite fits. You nod. He hands you a cup. It's warm, sweet, herbal. You drink. The liquid has no name. It doesn't need one. It's not like anything, it simply is. And in that moment, something inside you exhales. A tightness you didn't know you were carrying lets go. Not because you understood something new, but because you stopped needing to. The wind picks up. A swirl of dust dances across the sand. The fire flickers. Zhuangzi leans back, resting his head in his hands. The other figure may be lousy, maybe not offers a final thought. When the wind speaks, don't translate, just listen. You do, and for once, there's nothing more to say. The fire fades behind you, its warmth lingering in your chest like a remembered kindness. The two figures stay seated, their silhouettes slowly dissolving into the flickering dark, like shadows becoming themselves again. You walk on. The terrain shifts softly, sands giving way to shallow water. It wraps around your ankles like a sigh. The night sky reflects across the surface, your steps sending ripples through stars. You're not disturbing them, just reminding them you're here. And in the stillness, a question arises, not loudly, not sharply, just a whisper. Who are you, without your story? Zhuangzi once pondered the same. He wrote about the person who sheds identity not as an act of loss, but liberation. The way a snake sheds its skin, the way a wave dissolves back into ocean. You walk deeper into the shallows. The water only reaches your shins, but it feels endless. There's no fear here, just reflection on the surface and in the self. Not the small self, not the resume, not the online bio, the other self, the one beneath it, or beside it. Zhuangzi believed the self isn't a fixed shape. It's not a statue. It's not even a shadow. It's more like wind, formless, moving, invisible unless it brushes past leaves or skin. In one story, he tells of a man who forgets his name. His family is confused, his friends are alarmed, but the man, he is at peace. He walks the forests and the hills, and every time someone asks, "Who are you?" he replies, "I am whatever is here." Some read that as madness, others as awakening. You pause at the center of the water's reach, the stars now shimmering at your feet. You feel like one of them, small, silent, glowing for no one in particular. Who are you, without your name, without your ambitions, without the story you've told yourself since childhood? You wait for an answer. None comes. And that's the gift. Because Zhuangzi wasn't asking you to find a better label. He was inviting you to drop the suitcase entirely, to feel what it's like to stand with empty hands, to lose yourself without losing your way. There's another tale he tells of a man who wandered so far from home he forgot what home was. People pitied him, but he sat beneath a tree and smiled. "Everywhere is home now," he said, "because I no longer travel with maps." That line lingers in the air as you wade slowly back to shore. You haven't forgotten who you are. You've just stopped treating it like a fact. Modern psychology now talks about the narrative self, the version of you held together by memory, goals, and internal narration. It's useful, it's beautiful, but Zhuangzi would say it's not all of you. You are also the self that arises when the story falls silent, the breath in the silence, the you that doesn't need a role to play. You walk back onto dry land, water dripping from your calves. It doesn't matter where you're headed, you're already there, wherever you are. That's where the path becomes real. There's no applause, no, you did it moment. Just you, walking, breathing, not seeking, not escaping, just being. And in this being, you are free. You're walking through shadows now, but they don't feel heavy. They feel like velvet. Each step lands with a hush. The earth is soft beneath you, more suggestion than substance. Trees rise like ideas just out of reach, their branches curling into the sky like calligraphy drawn by a sleepy hand. And then, just ahead, you find a door. Freestanding, no building around it, just a wooden door, painted with peeling gold, floating in the middle of a clearing. It's already open. On the other side is nothing, or everything. It's hard to say. You step through, and suddenly, nothing makes sense, and that's fine. The stars rearrange themselves like punctuation marks. The sky bends downward to meet your feet. A river flows upward in lazy loops. A bird sings in reverse. Zhuangzi would be delighted, because this is his favorite place. The land of paradox. The territory where logic wears pajamas and drinks tea with contradiction. Where yes and no go dancing together, and maybe holds their coats. You float now, not flying, just drifting through impossibility. And in your ear, Zhuangzi whispers, if a man claps with one hand, does the echo dream of silence? You grin, not because you understand, but because the question doesn't need answering. He told stories like this all the time, about a man who dreamed he was a tree, dreaming it was a bird pretending to be a fish, about sages who argued until their names fell off, about snakes with mustaches debating whether circles are squares in disguise, each tale more nonsensical than the last, or perhaps more honest, because Zhuangzi believed that paradox wasn't a flaw in the system, it was the system. Reality isn't tidy, it's wild, wiggly, woven with contradictions. And we, poor humans, keep trying to iron it flat. Modern thinkers love to categorize, true or false, subjective or objective. But Zhuangzi walked into the library, knocked over the shelving system, and took a nap on the floor. Not to mock, but to remind us that wisdom often begins where neatness ends. You tumble gently through a tree that's also a question mark. You land on a cloud that smells faintly of garlic. None of this makes sense. All of it makes sense. Because the world is not an equation to solve. It's a riddle to savor. A puzzle made of laughter and loose ends. And the harder you try to pin it down, the more it wriggles free. You remember a Western philosopher once saying, A is a... Zhuangzi might have said, sure until it dreams its beat. And maybe he'd be right. Because how often have you changed shape, woken up a little different than the day before, believed one thing, then shifted gently to another? You don't live in definitions. You live in the dance. You spin now, slowly. The stars circle you like curious friends. A tree grows upside down nearby, and a fish swims lazily through the air. You're not confused. You're content. Zhuangzi might appear again riding a turtle, reciting poetry backward, but he doesn't have to. He's already here, in the nonsense, in the joy, in the smile you didn't know you were wearing. Paradox is not the enemy. It's the door. And you just walked through. Aksim. The world begins to slow. Not because it's tired, but because it's generous. You feel it in your limbs, in the air, in the invisible hands that have been carrying you without fuss. You're back on solid ground now, if it ever wasn't. The strange upside-down trees and sky rivers fade behind a gentle hill, You stand at its crest, looking out over a quiet valley filled with dust, soft, golden, drifting lazily in the breeze like ash that forgot to fall. Everything is quiet. And then, from somewhere not far away, you hear a voice. Not a command, not a teaching, just a suggestion. Let the dust settle on its own. It floats into your thoughts like a feather, familiar. Zhuangzi again. You can't see him, but you know he's nearby, or inside you, or both. Because that was always the spirit of his thought, not to fix, not to force, but to let. The dust of life, its confusions, expectations, fears, attachments it always stirs. Sometimes because we kick it up, sometimes because the wind does. And what do we usually do? We chase it, we try to swat it away, we demand clarity. But Zhuangzi, he simply waited. Because dust, left alone, always settles. You sit on the hilltop. The breeze wraps around you like a shawl. Below, the valley breathes. Light plays in the drifting gold. You recall a story of Zhuangzi's about a man who sees his reflection in a cup of tea. The image is blurry, distorted. He stares harder, frustrated, but the more he stares, the more the tea ripples. Until, finally, he looks away. And when he returns, the surface is still. And there he is, clear, calm, not because he tried to see, but because he stopped trying. The story ends there, as it should. You lie back in the grass. The sky is wider than before. Or maybe your mind is. Letting things settle isn't easy, especially now. Especially in a world that thrives on alerts and urgency and immediate action. We're told constantly to intervene, to fix, to optimize. But some truths emerge only in patience. Some clarity only arrives when we stop demanding it. The Tao isn't a machine, it's a mist. You don't direct it, you sit with it, you move when it moves. Zhuangzi would call this non-interference. Not because he didn't care, but because he understood that the most profound transformations often happen on their own. Like wounds healing, like trees growing, like dust settling. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to see what happens when you stop looking. You feel your thoughts, still circling, but softer now. They move like birds preparing to roost, no longer flapping, just floating. You breathe, not deeply, not deliberately, just naturally. And in that breath, a kind of trust unfolds, not in an outcome, not in a philosophy, just in the way things move when left alone. You don't need to resolve the paradox. You don't need to control the dream. You just let the dust fall, one grain at a time. And as it does, the world grows quieter. Not empty, just calm. You stand again, or maybe rise without standing. It doesn't matter. There's no ceremony, just motion where stillness ends. The dust has settled behind you, leaving the valley in golden hush. The hill feels like a farewell, and you don't resist its suggestion. You walk not toward, not away, but with. The sky ahead begins to lighten. Not with sun, with something softer, a pre-dawn glow, the kind of light that doesn't announce itself. It seeps in, like music through walls, like sleep returning after a long night of waking. You reach a meadow, and there, in the center, floating an inch above the grass, is the butterfly. Again, but it doesn't flutter, it rests. Its wings slowly open, then close, like breath. You kneel beside it, not to examine, just to accompany. And as you watch, you begin to wonder, not think, just wonder if maybe the butterfly has been sleeping this whole time. Maybe everything you've wandered through was its dream. Zhuangzi once wrote that in dreams, there is no separation, no me, no you, just flow. And when we wake, We carry traces of those dreams in our breath, in our bones. But what if we never fully wake? What if life is the butterfly's dream? Or yours? Or both? You lie down in the grass next to it. The earth is warm, the sky now tinged with the faintest pink. There's a sound in the distance, soft, rhythmic, like someone sweeping a porch, or maybe the sky clearing its throat. Zhuangzi's most beautiful teaching may not have been a teaching at all, but that not knowing is not a failure. It is peace. That the need to know is what binds us, and the freedom to rest in mystery is what frees us. You think back to all the strange companions, the scholar, the boat, the frog, the tree that couldn't be used, each one a question that didn't require an answer, each one an invitation to smile. The butterfly lifts now, just slightly. Its wings shimmer like breath on glass, and in that shimmer, you feel yourself settle too, into stillness, into quiet, into a kind of meaning that doesn't explain itself, but holds you anyway. You close your eyes. The air is warm, the sky forgiving. Somewhere nearby, Zhuangzi might be laughing, or sleeping, or becoming a butterfly again. You smile, because now you understand. You don't need to wake up. You're already home. And now, there's nothing more to follow, nothing more to seek. You can let go of the names, the paths, the questions, even the story itself. Let it all drift gently like a paper lantern floating into the night. You've walked far, but without ever needing to arrive. There's nowhere else to be. You're exactly where you are. Let your breath deepen now, not on purpose, just as a kindness to your body. Feel your limbs melt gently into the bed or floor beneath you, like they've always belonged there. Let your thoughts keep floating, or fading, or turning into butterflies. And if they don't, that's okay too. You don't have to understand. You never did. You just have to rest. Because in this dream, there is no need to know. Only the quiet, tender fact that not knowing can be peace. Not knowing can be freedom. And freedom, like sleep, is already here. Let it hold you. Let it hum through you. Let it carry you now. Sweet dreams, wanderer.